and went to the pizza farm.
Oh my God, the pizza farm.
That's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so everybody, we're back. And we are talking about the pizza farm and the Spud Boy in Lanesboro, Minnesota, which is not far from where I am right now in my family home. And Kate knows this because she's a foodie. And so we're talking about Norwegian food. And wait, who was calling a square dance? And that's why you were in Lanesboro?
Brother-in-law, Pop Wagner, who lives in Minnesota. He lives up, he used to be in Garrison Keillor's house band. And he's married to my half-sister, Thea Johansson. Fine Norwegian name, and they met. She was working the front of the house. Garrison Keillor crashed their first date. Anyway, when I was teaching at the Iowa Writers Workshop, Pop and Thea invited me and Brendan to come up to Lanesboro while he called a square dance. So we spent a weekend there.
At the Sons of Norway. And for those of you who don't know Lanesboro, which, you know, is surprising to me because everybody in the world should know about this tiny southeast Minnesota town. It is like this lovely town in the driftless region, which is sort of banks of the Mississippi. So there are a lot of bluffs. And it has all of these bike paths and a very like refurbished, very shishi downtown. And yet it retains its essential Norwegian character so that you like every weekend can go get Sons of Norway pancake breakfast and you eat it with like brown goat cheese called toast, which you like spread on the pancakes.
I love toast.
Oh.
So
right. Which baby is this?
That's Angus.
Angus, which is a very Minnesotan name, I should point out.
He came from the shelter with that name and it suited him. There's no food in his dish, in case you're wondering. He's just...
He just is checking, like magically the food might appear. Also, he wants to be on camera. We promised the people dogs. And by the way, Facebook is being squirrely today, audience. So we might pop off every 4 minutes because it keeps cutting off our live feed, but then we're gonna come back with a different topic. So we would like you to request topics for us to discuss. Obviously, you have come into the episode where we're discussing Norwegian food. So what's your favorite Norwegian food?
Toast.
Toast. Yay, toast. Yay, toast.
You know what's not my favorite Norwegian food?
Yes, I know. Yes. Lutefisk, right?
How did you know?
Because nobody likes lutefisk except like 105-year-old Norwegian pioneer women who used to like eat it and also scrub clothes on their washboards with it because it's lye. It's like codfish and lye, right?
Disgusting. It's not a thing that anybody should eat. It sounds actually toxic. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think so. The story about this that I was told as a youngin'. My mom's family is Norwegian. Kate and I are both like. Are you full Norwegian? Half Norwegian? Half. I am.
My father's family, who I don't know, alas, are in Minnesota, and they're the Norwegians.
Yeah, should I go find them?
Yeah.
Okay, you can tell me. Give me the name. I will go stalk them. We'll do like a road trip, like.
Oh yeah,
that'd be fun. Right?
They're the Johanssons, and they live in St. Paul and Lake Elmo. So hello.
Okay, so that's so easy because there are no other Johanssons in Minnesota. If I am going to find Kate's family, the Johanssons in Minnesota, I'll see you guys in 183 years because everybody here is named Hansen or Johansson or like Myrie or Stendhal or Christensen. Like everybody is a sen of something. My mom's first husband was named Hansen, of course. Oh. So yeah. So lutefisk, and Kate and I both love food. So this is like one of our bonding things. You might have thought you were signing on to hear authors talk about books, but first we're going to talk about food. So lutefisk is cod boiled in lye, and it was supposed to be a preservatory method. What happens to it is it becomes like a jellified brain that has been cooked for like 100 years. So it's like this glutinous mass. So have you ever actually tasted this?
No, you sound like you have.
No, I'm just making things, you know, I write fiction. I just make things up that I have not. I have been exposed to it and threatened with it.
So I've never seen it. I didn't grow up in Minnesota. I don't really know my Norwegian heritage is a bit of a mystery to me. So you're teaching me a lot about our the food of our homeland. Here's a question.
Okay.
My sister inherited from some Norwegian relative a pan that you make a potato thing in. Do you know what that is? What's it called?
Lefse.
Lefse, that's it.
Right? I feel like I'm on a quiz show. Kate, can we do like a foodie quiz show? Can we do another Friday thing where we have like a panel of food writers and be like, sounds like ding. So lefse is like, let me see how to describe. Actually, it's one of my favorite things in the whole world to eat, and we eat it at Christmas. And that's the holiday I associate it with. We have like Norwegian food Christmas Eve. Lefse is like a Norwegian quesadilla, but without the cheese. It's just like a flat bread that the old Norwegian ladies make on this strange flat pan. It kind of looks like the skin of a giraffe. Like it's like a white pita with like sort of giraffe spots on it. And it's made from potato flour. So it tastes like potatoes, and you eat it with butter. And if you're really Norwegian and the old generation, you eat it with sugar, butter and sugar, which is, I'm serious. I'm going to send you some because you can get it in the supermarket here under the Ufta brand. And I'm not kidding.
No, you're kidding.
So no, I'm sending it to you. And okay, so I could talk about Norwegian food forever, but I shan't. I will simply tell you that my local IGA here, which is like 2 aisles, has a big sign in it that says Home of the Meatball King. So I know you envy me so much right now because
you see my mouth watering.
Yes, I do.
Actually,
hashtag sorry, not sorry, but yes.
I'm toasting you.
Thank you. I will toast you with my South Dakota cup that has, this is Mount Rushmore before the fire, before the 4th of July fire that's coming like today.
I also see that it's wall drug, which if you turn it slightly, wall drug.
Yes, have you been to Wall Drug on your peregrinations?
Yeah.
Okay, so chin chin. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy 4th of July. Happy reading. What are you drinking?
I am drinking a Virgin Stormy Cape Codder, which I just invented for you.
Thank you, because it's stormy.
Yeah.
So let me guess, is it cranberry juice and ginger ale? Is it?
Yeah.
I'm so on today. I should be in Vegas, bitches. Vegas is so amazing. All right, so what is your favorite food of all time? Not Norwegian, not limited to the Norwegian palette of lye and potatoes.
That's a tough one. If I can't choose lye and potatoes, I would have to say it would be in the carbohydrate family. It might have potatoes. Oh, I can't choose potatoes.
No, you can't. No, you're not limited to that palette. Like you can, if you really feel the need to choose potatoes.
Whenever I'm really craving something, it's usually a grilled cheese sandwich. So I'm just going to go with a grilled cheese sandwich, which is interesting because I don't eat gluten or dairy. So make of that what you will. It's like an aspirational nostalgia kind of yearning. I
think a grilled cheese sandwich and a root beer float might be the perfect meal.
Yeah, kind of.
Right.
And a little tomato soup on the side.
Yes, and some bacon.
Oh God.
Maybe. Right. Sorry.
I was once on a train in Czechoslovakia, and I went to the train kitchen, dining car or whatever, and I had 8 bowls of tomato soup. And I'm only telling you this because tomato soup. So maybe tomato soup is also a favorite food. It's a kind of thing you can just, it's nostalgic and savory, and it has a lot of salt in it, which is always a plus, and it's tomato. I don't know.
And you can make it sophisticated in fufu if you want. It's like basil and like little droplets of truffle oil, or you can just eat it like from the can spoon and more salt. I think salt is always a really good thing.
Your grilled cheese sandwich in it.
In a can?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm classy, you can tell. Like I think the best grilled cheese is like that sort of Wonder Bread American cheese thing that you get in a diner, but I don't make that at home ever. So I think that's aspirational too. I'm just like, I just need the really bad for me grilled cheese. That's like my favorite thing. And my favorite food in the whole world is the lacy cheese that comes off the side of the sandwich in the pan.
That has a name. That actually has a name. It's like cheese lace. Lace,
right? I think when I come back to the East Coast, I know I've threatened you with this before, but I'm coming to your house so we can cook together, and I will bring you the lefse, and you can make me some cheese lace. Do you think so? Do you think what was it like to? I'm going to ask some writing questions now, since I think we're supposed to actually talk about that a little bit. But when you were writing about food, and I loved writing about food. The last novel I had in a restaurant, so it gave me an excuse to write about food. When you were writing about food, did it change your relationship to food in any way, or did it give you an excuse to kind of put your foot on the accelerator and be like, I'm going to cook all the things and eat all the things?
I started writing about food fictionally when I was in 8th grade. But actually writing about my life in food happened near my 50th birthday, and I was supposed to be working on a novel, and all of a sudden I just started writing about my life. But it wasn't. I wanted to write about food. I wanted to write. I'm not a cook, really. I mean, I like to cook, like everybody. I don't cook any better than anyone else. No, it's true. Ask my father-in-law. He'll tell you.
The Johansons?
What?
Oh no, it's your dad. Sorry, I'm like the Johansons, so I can't find a father-in-law. Okay, sorry.
My father-in-law is a real cook, and I force him to eat my cooking sometimes, and he's you know he would agree that I'm not a chef, but I think that writing about food is a way, it's a vector into something universal, into something sort of shared in everyone's experience that I it always feels like cheating when I do it in fiction, because everybody eats, everybody's interested. When I read about food, I perk up. I feel like it's a deep, deep, deep topic, and it conveys, it's like a shortcut to tell you about characters in fiction. But when I started writing about my life, I felt like I shouldn't be allowed to do this. In a way, it was sort of like, this is so profoundly self-indulgent, and so profoundly pleasurable isn't really the word. It just sort of close to the bone and organic, and what I really think about, and what I really spend a great deal of my day obsessed with. Instead of sort of thinking about ideas in the world, and but I've discovered in writing about food that it is about ideas, and it is about the world. And when it's done in a way that isn't sort of romanticizing food, which of course is also fun and legitimate, but talking about food is a kind of complicated topic for American women, in particular, I think, in terms of, everything. Like, and I'm actually going to say American white women, because I think we're really weird about food culturally. Like, we we have all these weird notions about what we are and aren't allowed to put in our bodies that strikes me as a kind of identity almost, that we all share. And so I feel like I kind of tapped into that, and it gave me this subversive kind of, just like, I want to eat whatever I want to eat for the rest of my life. I don't want to think about, and I don't eat gluten, and I don't eat dairy, which is really for health reasons, and I would if I could. But beyond that, I feel like the pleasure of food is so immense and profound that just to eat for pleasure, and to think about what you want, like a grilled cheese sandwich, or tomato soup, or a piece of chocolate cake, or on and on and on, an oyster, just for pleasure. And I think that the experience of writing about food, and writing about how screwed up my relationship with food has been all my life, kind of enabled me to let it go and enjoy. Life is short, and I feel like one nice thing about being over 50 is that the whole idea of perfection has gone out the window, and the whole idea of what you should do, or and this applies to a lot of things in writing. I think it's freeing and sort of kind of novel to sort of just, I want this, so I'm going to have it, damn it. I was very eating disordered for a while, and so that's really what I'm referring to.
I totally get that. I mean, I related, I'm sort of wrapped by what you're saying, wrapped about what you're saying, because I can relate to so much of it. And one of the sad things is, as you mentioned, each food item that you wanted, I had an emotional reaction to each one. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of our viewers didn't have the same thing. Like, I'm thinking oyster, good, low calorie, zinc, chocolate cake, sin, right? Grilled cheese sandwich, like maybe once a month in the winter. I mean, like, these are like instant associations, right? And I had that sort of eating disorder.
That's how we think. I know.
So it's like a little lexicon. Remember, women used to carry around calorie counters? I had one of these as a teenager. It was actually a little book with tiny, tiny font, but it would tell you how many calories everything had. And I would like consult it, before I had anything. Like a grape is like 3 calories, and I had to sort of walk that off. And I feel like, if you came of age in the 70s and 80s, like you had a way. Was that?
You're younger than I am. Maybe you're too young to remember Phoebe Cates in 17 magazine.
What cakes?
Phoebe Cates.
Baby cakes. I do. I remember the name, but I'm like conflating it with like Love's Baby Soft, which is
no.
What are baby cakes?
No, this is a model. She was a model in 17 magazine who later married Kevin Kline. Phoebe Cates.
Oh, Phoebe Cates. I thought you were saying Baby Cates. No, I totally know who Phoebe Cates is. And I think I'm like your exact age, honestly. And also I was making faces when you were saying you had turned 50, because I'm like, what?
I'm making the same faces back at you. Is it being outrageous?
Right. This is just like a lovely, like, mutual admiration thing we have. We're like, yeah. But I mean, one of the other things I related to is, I totally remember Phoebe Cates, and whatever happened to her. I know our Mighty Blaze team is posting contextual information in the Facebook comments, and I hope that they pull up Phoebe Cates' Wikipedia page or whatever, so we can go look at the comments and be like, whatever happened to Phoebe Cates? But yes, I remember her. I remember 17. I remember feeling very corseted, like my whole, like as soon as I became aware that I had an adolescent girl body, like immediately food as joy stopped. And I was a kid who could eat a whole bag of Doritos at a sitting and chase it with a jar of Bacos and, whatever. I just love food, and I still am like a blonde lab. Like, I love food. I have breakfast, I'm thinking about lunch. I'm at lunch, I'm like, what's for dinner? And I go to sleep and I'm like, oh, I get to have a breakfast in like 8 hours. So that's so exciting. But I am not probably at the brave place you are, where you're just like, I wrote it, so I let it go, and now I can eat what I want. Like, I'm still thinking like, oh, I really want that ice cream, but it's ice cream bad, and I just think that's such a shame. I just think it's a sad thing. And I do think that for those viewers who are not yet in their 50s, a power decade. I feel like the closer that I'm going to be 50 this year, everybody looks shocked.
Shocked.
Yeah, well, I'm shocked about you too. And like, my plastic surgeon is just like, oh Jesus, did she actually say, like, all the work that we've done with Botox, and now she's admitting her age? Why? But I mean, I really feel like you do get to a point where you just think time is a little more limited, and so I get to eat what I want. Like Elizabeth Berg, who I talked to last week, has a great book about this called The Year I Ate Whatever I Wanted, and it's all about pleasure and experiencing pleasure. And it's like, ladies, just enjoy. Gentlemen, enjoy. Like, whoever you are, just freaking enjoy. Life is short, right?
Nobody cares. Nobody cares but you.
No. And also, if you're not 20 and you don't have a 20-year-old body anymore, and you never ever will have a 20-year-old body anymore, it doesn't matter if you put a piece of cake on your body. Like, it's fine, right? It's great. I love it. I love being this age. There's nothing I can do, or any liposuction could ever do, to take all the cake off. So you might as well have the cake and just be healthy and enjoy your life, although not in COVID, I guess. So do you think the process of writing memoir is different from writing fiction? Like, when you wrote fiction, could you let things go also that were troubling, or was the memoir more freeing?
Fiction is different. I feel like in fiction, I write about, it's much more about me than memoir in a strange way. Memoir was.
What do you mean? That's so interesting.
It's more personal. I mean, and because I can hide behind characters, and I've taken on the voices of all different sort of sexes and sexual persuasions and or identities and so ages and sort of in the guise of a narrator. And I'm thinking about The Epicure's Lament, which is a book I wrote after 9/11, while I was having a nervous breakdown. And I wrote about my nervous breakdown, and that's what the Epicure's Lament is about. It's about a suicidal 40-year-old man living on the Hudson River in his ancestral mansion, smoking himself to death. He has Berger's disease, which is curable by quitting smoking, but he won't do it. And I felt this in his voice, which is mordant and angry and antisocial. I could say all the things I couldn't say in my actual life as an unhappily married 40-year-old woman in Brooklyn, New York. I took on a persona and peopled his life with characters that he didn't want to deal with and forced him to deal with them. And that's the plot of the book, basically. And also the question of whether or not he would succeed in committing suicide, which he was determined to do. And that book is maybe the most personal book I've ever written. And the most sort of honest, really, about how I think and how antisocial I really am. And
that's why I'm laughing, like, haha, that's so funny, Kate.
It's true. Introverts unite separately.
Yes, exactly. We love Zoom secretly. We're just like, I can see you, then I shut my laptop, bye, right? It's a thing. Do you think, I'm really interested in this. I feel like many of us walk around with different voices in our heads, and some of them feel like the true essential voice that you talk to yourself in, or that talks at the world. You know what I mean? Like the voice that makes the commentary about the people eating the this or driving the that, or, you know, whatever, just like the voice that comments on the encounters that you have with the world and people in general. And that's a voice that I agree, I wouldn't necessarily put into memoir, because memoir is sort of like experience recounted in retrospect, but that voice is almost like a repertorial voice, I guess. Do you feel that the character, remind me of the character's name in the Epicure's Lament?
His name is Hugo.
Hugo, that's right. I just remembered as you were talking, my favorite line from that book, which I'll throw at you in a minute toward the end. But do you feel like Hugo actually is that voice that you talk to yourself in, that you were able to give to a male character because it was fiction?
I don't think, no, his voice is very much his, and he is very much his own person. It's funny. It's almost like, well, no, it's not like being an actor. It's really different. I'm not an actor, obviously. It's like creating a sort of shape in which I can sort of, that can inhabit all these things. And it's, fiction is such a strange animal, and creating it is such a weird thing to do, I think, in my more lucid moments, like inventing people who have their own sort of desires and problems. And, you know, it's like, why would you want extra problems? Why would you want, you know, why would you want to inhabit someone else who's crabby and complicated and, you know, isn't my own brain enough? But apparently not. It's like, it's like an offshoot of my own sort of, I have too much energy in my brain. And so that's where the fictional impulse comes from, I think. It's like sun flares off my brain that need to go somewhere and be channeled. And whereas memoir is more deliberate and artificial, I think. For me, I'm not a memoirist. I had to write that book. I was compelled in a way that I couldn't deny to write it. And I wonder, since you're turning 50, I wonder if you're feeling like how your writing is shaping itself around your own life.
Wow. That's a great question. I'm supposed to ask all the questions, Misty, but I'll answer that question. Anyway, no, I think we're having a conversation, so thanks. Over to you. I guess I don't think of my writing in any way that's that grand, I guess. I mean, if I stand on a ledge and look back over the peaks and valleys of my writing career, I'm like, my oof. The primary thing I feel is sort of guilty, because I have only 3 novels and then a 10th that was a novella in an anthology. And I feel like girl, what have you been doing? Like you were doing a lot of procrastinating and like procrasti-shopping and like procrasti-TJ Maxxing and, you know, whatever. I feel as I would have liked to have written more. So if I'm looking at my work as like a body of work, I think my body of work, like I love my novels and they're big, heavy books, and they're all dark and required a lot of research, but I still feel like I haven't really earned an oeuvre. I tend to write about the things that are really pulling me at the time. And that's why it takes me so long to write books, because a book to me takes 5 years to write, sometimes 10 years with all the research. And it really is like a sort of an episodic marriage, like I'm a serial monogamist. And I don't want to plug into a book only to find out 2 years in that I really am not into the idea. So it just takes me a really long time to settle on an idea that I'm so in love with that I can spend the next 5 years writing it. And then, you know, the rest of my life talking about it with enthusiasm and love and joy and passion. And so I test drive a lot of ideas in between books and wait for one to drag me around by the hair. And that I don't know if that will always be my process, but it is now. I think in terms of writing memoir, one of the reasons I'm looking at you with beady-eyed interest about this is that the project that I'm wrapping up this month is a memoir. It's my first memoir, but it's not about me and it is about me. So I think you're totally right. In fiction, a lot of the emotions that I am working with and struggling with, the questions that I can't find answer for, I put into the bodies of my characters and make them act out all of those questions and chew on them that way, right? So those topics are very, very personal, deeply, deeply personal to me. Yeah. So if somebody comes up to me at a dinner party and says, I have a book you should write, like I thank them for their enthusiasm, but like that's never how I write a book. Like it has to be something from like in my stomach that I like put on the table and try to make palatable. The memoir is about my old dog. Like it's about my 15-year-old dog who I lost right before Christmas, and how for the last 7 months of his life, he wasn't mobile. And because I loved him so much, I stopped doing all my own events. I missed my own paperback launch for my last book. And, you know, I'm such a marketing whore that like, that never happens. But I was sitting on a park bench with my dog every single day, totally stationary. My introvert self had to talk with strangers because we were like a sitting target. We couldn't move away. Strangers, homeless people, like people in my neighborhood I'd never met before, friends who came to help us. And so it opened me up to life in a totally new way. Like I had to accept help. I had to ask for help. I had to talk to strangers. I had to talk to people who were different from me, you know, like it was. And that's what the dog taught me. So it's like Tuesdays with Maury, but with a dog. And I feel like a memoir is a neatly encapsulated thing. A fiction it's a whole world, right? And my voice in the memoir, I think it's my voice, but it's like my magazine voice. And you write a lot for magazines, right? So there's a little bit of
that's well put.
That remove.
Yeah, maybe. For sure. Yeah, I mean it's personal, but it's not intimate the way fiction is, I think. And I
I mean, you can do tip of iceberg much more easily with memoir, right? Like you're writing about a thing, like you're writing about a topic. Although I do think, and I made a study of memoirs since I decided to write one, I was like, perhaps you should read even more memoirs. I feel as though whatever the memoir is nominally about, it's actually still about the writer. So that I'm writing about my very, very old dog and I love him so much and want him stamped on every page, but it's really about what he taught me. So even like, you know, Marley and Me is about this hellacious dog, but it's really about a man growing up and accepting responsibility for being a family dude. Do you think that was true of your memoir, that it was more about you or more about the food? Or
I wanted to write about food. I really didn't want to write about my own life. And so my way into the book, well, I had a blog and I wrote about food on the blog, and I wrote about moving up to New England, leaving Brooklyn and New York, where I'd lived for 20 years, and falling in love with a man 20 years younger than me, who I eventually married, who's my husband now. We've been together, you know, we're in our 12th year. And
everyone out there is like, yes, girl, get it. All the younger men are like, yes, girl, yes.
He's going to be 40 next, you know, in a couple, like.
Now you need a new young one, right? You're going to go out, be like, you're too old for me now, honey. I'm sorry. I have to go. What was that like? I have not read that part like yet. Tell us what the whole experience, like everything you say, I feel like could be a novel in and of itself. Just like leaving New York and moving to a rural place and falling in love with somebody 20 years younger. Tell us how you met and tell us what that was like culturally.
We met in a bar. Um, well, I had just left my husband 2 weeks before and moved out of our house, and I wasn't ready to meet anybody else. I just sprained my ankle and I didn't want to go out. But a friend of mine who's a writer was in town and invited me to and other friends to come and meet her at a bar. So I went because she was only in town for one night and I wanted to see her, and that was my chance. So I showed up at this bar in the West Village, and then she tells me that this young guy is about to arrive, and she was a yenta. She was like, give him a chance. I know he's really young, but give him a chance. And I was like, I am not ready to meet someone.
You're like, 2 weeks and I can't walk. Like, I can't hobble away from him if I don't like him. Like, what? This is a terrible setup. Move a little bit closer to your computer because you got quiet again, and come closer to us and tell us the story. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Anyway, that was Brendan. I met him, and it was kind of love at first sight, corny as it sounds. It's true. And I kind of encourage him to tell the story the same way, so that he felt I might have fallen in love with him at first sight. I think maybe he took 5 minutes. And so, and finally we had a date 7 months later. We kept in touch and went out to dinner, and we've been together ever since. And I mean, he's 20 years younger than I am. So the other day we were comparing notes about the late 80s.
Oh my God. And he was like, I was a zygote. You were in junior high.
No, I was married and he was in junior high, but this isn't the late 80s. But, you know, it was that kind of thing. It's sort of like, what were you doing in 1996 when I was married and living in Brooklyn and writing my first novel? And he's like, I was in 8th grade.
Oh, yeah, I had braces. Do you think, I mean, I find this totally fascinating. And this is like the kind of thing that I think that, forgive the generalization, but a lot of men I know have dated women who are 20 years their junior. And I always am curious about that, because I dated somebody once who was 14 years younger than I was, whose mom actually owned a ring business. And she gave me a ring shaped like a cougar that I could wear around. And like, kind of like, because I was a cougar, I loved her. I'm like, I'm having a relationship with you. And he was also really great. But, you know, I was like, that ring though, you know, but I thought it was so interesting because there was a cultural sort of a vocabulary difference in how we understood like America, for instance, or television or culture, or, you know, the other day I found myself apologizing to a young woman who I was interviewing to be an intern for the Blaze and saying, I'm so sorry about our country. It wasn't always like this. I promise you, like, it was not always this effed up. It was, you know, and I felt like that was probably the biggest challenge that I had dating somebody who was younger, was that I would say, oh my gosh, I have to pay the mortgage. And he had a roommate. So it was a little bit, but it sounds like you're in a different place in your life.
Yeah, and he's been sort of in his mid 70s since he was 15. I mean, he always jokes like he's actually a much older man, and I'm sort of, you know, perennially and mentally anyway, I'm sort of 15 years old. So really? Age is a weird, yeah. I still love Phoebe Cates, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, who dat? And he's like,
he's more sort of, you know, culturally savvy and sophisticated, and no, he's our age difference comes up only when we're sort of comparing notes about where each of us was at any given sort of time. Otherwise, I feel like he's older. And I think that age is an interesting phenomenon. It's sort of like, you know, you are who you are from the time you're born. And I've talked to some old people who say this, that they look in the mirror and they don't at all relate to the face that they see, because in their mind, they're still, you know, 25, 18, 6. So I feel like identity and age sort of part ways at a certain point. And you really, you know, and maybe that point is 50, maybe it's 40, I don't know, where you feel so much younger than you actually are. And by you, I mean me, and possibly others. And so being with someone a lot younger has it's strangely freeing because we don't know how old we are. You know, our 100th birthday is coming up when I turn 60 and he turns 40.
Oh my God, that's great. I kind of love that. We need to have like a really big centurion party. It's really good food.
We'll be 100 collectively. And
right. I think that's pretty amazing. Yeah, I think I have heard the same thing. What age do you think you would be if your age clock internally, your emotional clock stops, you know, advancing and doesn't keep up with your calendar years? What age would you be?
I think 34. You know, I think that there was something about being 34 that felt right. Like, yeah, I think I'm 34. How about you?
I was gonna say like 47 or 48, which I kind of like am. So I'm like, oh, good. So maybe I haven't caught up with myself yet, but I had so much striving in my 20s and I found that really miserable. And I don't know about you, and I'd love to ask, but I was so consumed with ambition. I was also married in my 20s, not happily. And so for me, the time when people are like, this is your zenith, you know, your young body that you inhabit or whatever, like to me, it was a time of great intensity, which is great, but like also like terrible misery because there was such a gulf between what I wanted to be and what I was at that moment. And I found that really difficult. And 30s, I found a bit torturous because I had to make that sort of child decision and everybody else was getting married and I got divorced when everybody else was getting married. So I have been demographically out of step my whole life. And now I kind of like that. But I mean, it took a while to get used to it. So I feel like this has been a good decade. Like 40s are a good, I can just stay here forever. I'm just going to be 40.
No, you're going to love your 50s.
Okay.
You will.
I'm fine. I'm like, bring it on. Like I have enjoyed the step, every step I've gone up on the ladder. I have really liked. So how old were you when you published your first book?
I was 38.
Oh, good.
37. I was 37.
Did you feel this was like the pinnacle that you had been striving for your whole life to that point?
Yes, I did. And I remember when my agent at the time sold the manuscript to Doubleday after it in the drink, and it was rejected, I think 27 times by everybody, including Doubleday. But there was a persistent young editor there who liked it and related to it and saw some literary merit in it. So she convinced me to rewrite it, and I did. And meanwhile, she was promoted and she could acquire it, and she did. And I remember the day it sold, and it was a 2-book deal. So they actually wanted another book from me. And I remember walking around New York feeling like singing, you know, like if you can make it there, you make it anywhere, sort of feeling like, I don't know, this kind of, it had nothing to do with publishing it. It had to do with the fact that it found a home, it found an editor. I actually sold a novel, not only finished, which took me years, but it was going to be published and by a New York publishing house. And I remember this sense of sort of, okay, I did it. And never mind that, you know, it comes out, you get bad reviews, people hate it, you have to write another one, then it becomes a career. That I think was one of the purest moments as a writer that I've experienced. It was like a bridge between being aspirational and being a published writer and feeling like I can call myself a writer now.
And you don't have to worry about it anymore. Like you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, like like every day now I wake up and think I should be writing. So there's never actually a day where I feel like I have a day off, because every day that I have extra time, I'm like, you don't have extra time. You need to be right. You need to work.
Right.
But I do feel as though I don't have to lug that aspiration up the hill anymore. Like I could just set down that burden and say, no matter what else happens in the world, on my deathbed, I could say that I had this book out, and that was what I wanted. Did you always want to be a writer? Like, did you always want that thing?
Yes, I feel like there was no plan B, and so that's what kept me going. I suppose I could have been a teacher. I love teaching, but in terms of passion and feeling like I really was put on earth to do this one thing. I have one trick only, and it's writing. And I felt like, I remember nights in my 20s, and I felt like you did in my 20s. I felt like the life I wanted was on the other side of a thick pane of glass, and I had no idea how to get there. I had absolutely no idea. I was so miserable and so ambitious and so convinced that, you know, maybe I could do it. I just didn't know how, except to keep writing. And so I wrote my way out of misery in a way. And so that moment when I knew that my book was going to be published, I felt as if the pane of glass broke, and I sort of, you know, there was the life I had wanted since I was little, and somehow thought would just magically happen when I was 8 or 9. I thought, well, yeah, I mean, I can make it. I do my homework, right? And I, you know, so it's going to be like that, you know.
Right, and you just keep doing. I mean, because again, like growing up in the same era, people told us you can be whatever you want. I grew up listening to Free to Be You and Me, so I was like, I can be Atalanta, but I don't want to run fast. I want to write books. That's what I'm going to do. Damn it! And I was like, mouth breathing through all the years, you know, between then and when I got published, like determined to make that happen. Like, right, like that's the only thing I wanted. Why writing, do you think? Why did you only want to write? You said it was the only trick you can do, and that's how I answer people also. And they say, why did you want to be a writer? I'm like, it's the only thing I was ever good at, honestly, except maybe teaching and eating.
Same. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, did you knew when you were like 8 or 9 or before that, did you have like a come to Jesus, or was it just sort of embedded in you?
No, I think it's like knowing you're gay. I think it's really similar. I knew I was a writer. Like, you know, as soon as I knew there was such a thing as books and stories, and I think part of it was loving reading and wanting to do that myself. And part of it was just an identity. Like, that's who I am. I'm a writer. I don't know. I'm not anything else, really. I played the violin and I love music, but I was never good enough to be a musician. And the fact that I became good enough to be a published writer didn't happen. I think that with music, I didn't want to practice, but with writing, I did.
Yes.
And you know, with anything else, there was nothing else that I was willing to give that kind of energy to. And that kind of obsessive, unrelenting, daily, sort of nitpicky, but joyful attention. And it, to me, there is nothing else gives me that feeling. And when something happens to me that's humiliating or depressing or makes me mad, or I have a fight with a friend, or, you know, there's something interpersonally or anything like shameful in my life, I comfort myself. Actually, I've never talked about this. I picture myself typing, and it's comforting.
Oh, I love that. It's like, that's the thumb sucking, but you have a place to put it. Like, I'm so glad you shared that, because I feel the same way. I think of this montage in a movie that I am helpless not to watch every time it's like on TV. Oh my God, Something's Gotta Give, which is like Diane Keaton, Jack Nicholson.
Oh, yeah.
Their affair. And to me, like the plot of the movie is the least interesting part of the movie. The house is great. Like the Nancy Meyers movies, all their houses are great. But my favorite part of this movie is this montage where Diane Keaton has just been snubbed by Jack Nicholson and like sort of dumped, and their affair is maybe over. She's a playwright. So she goes back to her beautiful house from New York. She goes out to the Hamptons and she's like, and she looks at the screen and she's like, you know, and she does this for the whole montage, and her house fills up slowly with Kleenex and like walled up paper. And then at the end, she's like, you know, and then she has a play. And I'm like, that's writing right there. That's like the alchemy of writing. I just scared my dog and woke him up. But like, okay, so this is not Angus. Who is that?
That's Ruthie. That's Ruthie. She likes your voice. She came to find out who you are.
She probably came to save you from like whoever was screaming. Literally, like,
female dogs. She reacts to emotional distress.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, Ruthie. I'm sorry.
A male dog who doesn't care. She's over by the food bowl, and she's like, someone's crying.
Aww. Yeah, you're like, you guys, you're being cliched. You need to switch up your gender roles a little bit. Like the guy needs to come over and be like, Pookie, do you need some food? Let me rub your feet. Yeah, no, I totally love that. I do the same thing. I think that writing in that way is alchemy, because whatever bad thing happens, you have a basket in which to put it. And I have been doing that since I was really little, and it's very efficient. It's like recycling. Like you can repurpose like all of the crappy things and then use them to reach out across the void to other people.
Yeah.
I feel like so that is like what could be better than that, and hopefully people feel less alone, right? Then
that's the hope. I mean, you know, there's always a reader in my mind who I'm writing to. It's
do
not
you have a specific reader, like Stephen King writes for his wife purportedly?
No, I feel like I write for an imaginary readership that I feel are people like me who share certain tendencies, who see the world in a certain way. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm more writing for an idea of a tribe that I feel that I'm part of when I read writers who speak to me in that way. Yeah.
Who speaks to you in that way most? Like a handful of people, because I know just think of one person, you're like, oh damn it, I'm failing this quiz. So just like letters you love.
It's the question I always dread.
Sorry, oh my god, that's awful. Okay, Lynn, who do you hate as a writer? No, don't answer that. Oh, answer if you like.
No, you know who I hate is Henry James.
Okay, he's dead. We can say that.
Yeah, I can talk about dead writers.
Okay, yeah, you can say that.
I'm not a Henry James fan, except for Washington Square, which I read many years ago and really liked.
Why do you hate Henry James?
I feel like he's in love with the sound of his own voice in a way that is just unforgivable to me. Like did he ever reread his manuscripts? And I mean, Edith Wharton is a master of economy. She is well, not all her books, but her great ones are sort of have been lessons for me. Not that I took what I learned.
You're like, I am Edith Wharton.
No.
Hello.
But if you put a page of Henry James next to a page of Edith Wharton, I feel like she says it's like a page of French next to a page of English. It's like, and he's French. Why did it took you 500 words to say what can be said in English in 2 sentences?
Right. Or if they were German, it could be said in 1 word, but it would have like 20. There's like that whole, I tend to agree with that. So one of the things that you don't like is like sort of masturbatory overlocution, right? Like if you like just overlocution, maybe you could just be,
it's sort of like explaining emotions. Edith Wharton is so good at conveying, like, let's take The House of Mirth, for example. She's so good at saying something in a way that makes you feel smart, like you get it, that's ironic and understated and sort of about us. She's getting into the head of a character who undoes herself because she has fatal, I mean, it's like a modern tragedy. She can't get out of herself. Whereas Henry James, when he's explaining, Daisy, let's say, it's sort of like, I get it. Just please go on with the story because, I got it like 8 sentences ago.
Right. Do you think it's like the original mansplaining?
Yes!
In a way, right? It's like the whole show don't tell thing, I think, is a little bit like mansplaining, where it's just like, or womansplaining for that matter, where I'm just like, you don't need to tell me, like, I got it. I'm fast. Like, you don't need to like belabor this point. Yes. All right. So I'm getting little notes from our producers that like I could seriously have this discussion, like turn it into a slumber party. Like we could talk about stuff all night. Like I feel like I've only just scratched the surface of like all the fun stuff I want to talk about. And also I'm really sad that I didn't know you in my 20s. I knew there were cool people in New York and I was missing out by being in Minneapolis at that time instead of in New York because I was
You
like,
wouldn't have known me because I just stayed home. I didn't know anybody in my 20s.
All right. Well, maybe I would have like seen you across an air shaft and written about you or something. There's a woman who's always at her typewriter like me. Hi, I'm sad. Let's drink. All right, but which is such a New York kind of thing. But tell me, like readers will not forgive me if I don't ask you who you are reading now, who is exciting, if anybody. And have you been able to read during quarantine? I hear a lot of writers say they can't read right now, but you are the writer who is apocryphal, who actually has written a book during Corona. Like everybody's like, who the hell is that? And it's like, it's you, Kate. Like, you're the one.
Well, I think I'm not alone. I think some of us have been able to write and some of us haven't, and it affects us all in different ways. I have not been able to read. I have not been able to read fiction because I'm writing a novel and because things are happening in the world, and I feel like I need, even though I'm in my house with my dogs, I need to know, because it's such an interesting time to be alive, and things are changing by the minute, and things are terrible and things are hopeful. So I'm not reading any fiction. I am reading the news, and
the news is like stranger than fiction right now anyway. So I kind of feel like we could be forgiven for not. I actually, now that you mention it, have not read a book probably since starting A Mighty Blaze, because I, have been promoting books, but also because you're right. Like my evening reading time has all gone to watching, like trying to catch up on what happened that day.
Same.
And one more question. I had a call right before this with another writer who was saying, like, he runs a literary magazine, and he was saying, thank God I do this because I have a sort of instant response to, current events, as we could start, a section of the magazine that is in response. Is Pangyrus, I think is the name of the magazine. I messed that up. It's a great magazine though, even though I can't pronounce it because that's just me. But I was saying the same thing for the Blaze. Like we started the Blaze, Caroline Levitt and I, and our fantastic freaking dream team, as like a sort of a bullet to bite on during COVID, where we're all like, we're all novelists, nobody could write, so we're all freaking out. And started this instead to help other writers.
Thank you for doing that, by the way. I was going to do that at the beginning of the interview, but I'll do it now. Thank you for doing this, and for promoting books, and for promoting writers, and keeping books in people's minds during this time when no one can read.
Yeah, right. You're welcome, everybody. Like, what a joy. I mean, but there are a lot of readers out there who are still reading, and I think just people being trapped at home, like seeing writers at least talk about writing reminds you of why you love reading. And for me, the greatest joy of the Blaze, honestly, besides connecting with readers, is these interviews I get to do every week with writers I love. And then you plug into what's pure about writing. Like you said about your New York selling your book moment, like this is the purity. Like this to me is the fountain that I drink from. Is like we get to talk about writing and about books, and I absolutely love it. So I'm so grateful for your time. But I had another question. Oh, do you think that because you're a novelist and a memoirist, and not a obnoxious book marketer like some people, do you feel like the COVID and the unprecedented in our generation, like for many generations, this moment that we're living in, do you think there's like an intersectionality there with what you're writing about? Does it make you think about what you're going to write about next, or is that your own private bubble that you get to retreat to?
I started the book a year ago, maybe a little more. And, the world seemed dark then. And I'm writing about, it's set in Maine. It's about a climate scientist, I should say. And so something I think about a lot is, the fact that we have trashed our planet, and there's an existential despair that goes along with that. How do we go on in the face of that? And so that's really what the book is about. That's kind of its essential question. So it started out being about how to go on as a climate scientist, a female menopausal climate scientist whose mother dies when the novel opens. And as I've written the book and the world has sort of spun on its axis around the sun, so much has been happening that has really, I think the whole climate conversation has stopped in the face of Black Lives Matter and COVID and the upcoming election. There's a sort of stepping back from the climate, which I think is dreadful, but I think that should be the first thing we talk about. And I don't know, I think there's a sense of, as things change in all these different directions, they are changing also in ways that are good for the planet. So, but what I'm writing really, it doesn't really relate thematically to COVID. Obviously, it's weird to write about a time when people could, hang out in bars and kiss each other and, congregate. And so yeah, there's a definite disjunction that I feel and I don't know what that means or what the harbinger is of that.
Yeah, no, it's too early to tell, right? I think many writers I know compartmentalize. I know I do, and the writing is its own thing. I don't feel a responsibility to be a chronicler of the present moment, or I would have been a journalist. And I'm not. And my dad was a journalist. I definitely know the difference between a good journalist and a fiction writer. But I feel as though, in terms of like, how does fiction then shape itself to what we're living through now? Like, we're all sort of like crash test dummies right now. Like, we don't know. But I do feel like, as we were saying in the beginning part of the discussion, that like we don't have to go through it alone. Like, you know, we're sort of all in our houses, but everybody is in the same boat. It's a leveler in a sense. And I feel like all the writers struggle with the same question in the same way they did after 9/11 or after the last election, when things were so in so much upheaval. Like, this is even bigger. So I can't wait to read the book. Do you have a working title?
Well, no, I've been told I have to change it, so I'm not even going to say what it is.
Damn. Okay. You can tell me secretly.
But if anyone has any ideas, I'm all ears for titles that pertain to menopause and climate change.
Oh my God. All right, people, you heard it here first. Like, if you have ideas about a title that ties together menopause and climate change, bring it to the Blaze. Kate's going to go through all the comments. She will send a copy of the book. I'm volunteering you for this when it comes out.
And I'll name a cocktail after you.
Right. Our producer, Tom, says you should just call it Change. So you have like a cocktail that changes color or something in like a Wonka-y kind of way, right? That would be really good.
I like it.
Right? Change. All right, I have to let you go. I have to let everybody go. It is cocktail hour officially. So I'm going to let everybody go off to their cocktails, their 4th of July weekends. Everybody be safe. Happy reading, Kate. I love talking to you. I could talk to you like all weekend, and you'd be so happy if I did that, I'm sure. But yeah.
I'm going to show up in Lanesboro before you even know it.
Oh, please do. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. And for those of you who missed the beginning of the conversation because it got truncated, I'm in my family home in Minnesota. It's not far from Lanesboro, Minnesota, if you know what it is. It's a great place where they have lots of yay toast goat cheese. So,
which is delicious.
That's the end of that conversation. Can't top yay toast. Can't top yay toast. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Jenna. Bye.